Hi folks, welcome to Tuesday. This is a video I've been wanting to make for quite some time because it deals with some really personal memories that go quite far back. Aside from that, if you like what I do, then please subscribe to the channel, make sure that you're following along, and if you really like what I do, then the Patreon is down below if you want to buy me a beer. That is all available for you down below. We also have a new musical accompaniment onto the video. That is from somebody called Lux Ambient Music. That is also in the description down below. Go and support his music if you can, if you got the time. And apart from that, let's jump in, because this is something that over the past couple of weeks has come up more and more and more, and that is the need for Warhammer 40,000 to have its own primer, its own starter set for lore. Before we do that though, if you want to get any more models over the next couple of weeks, Composite Games is the place for you. If you enter the promo code Northern Exile down below, you will get 5% off at checkout on whatever you order. So, if that tickles your fancy, head on over there. Every time you do, it does support the channel as well. So, this video is titled, You Should Never Pay for the Lore, or You Should Never Pay for Lore, and I'm aware that that's a bit controversial, but hey, here we go. In recent times, I've come across a few videos about how 40k is relatively difficult for a new person to get into, and how there should be an ongoing primer to the lore of sorts to get a new person's foot into the door of our settings, quote unquote. There was a Lewittin video a while back that dealt with this issue, but didn't really go into any specifics. I think it was there just to raise the point and why it's important. So an answer to that question from me is for another video that I will work on in the future, and that is, what kind of a primer should there be? And that'll be a video for probably next week. This video, though, will focus on something else entirely. The story of Warhammer 40,000 should be free. Now, this may seem like a controversial thing to say. I mean, how could this ever work? Games Workshop have made a ridiculous amount of money on the Horus Heresy and other novels over the years. You can't just throw lore at people for free, That's the good stuff. Well, yes, you can actually throw it at them for free. And I'm about to show you how. So back in the day, I was just starting to get into 40k like most of you. This is before the Horus Heresy series, and so the distinction between the two timelines was not yet so vast. In fact, the Horus Heresy was considered an obscure part of the wider 40k canon. Not 30k canon. 30k was not a thing in 2003, the good old days. So, after school most days, I would be at my grandparents' house, as my mum was still at work until about 5ish in the afternoon. I would watch TV, read, and even sometimes paint models I had brought with me from home. One day, whilst on her way back from Liverpool, my mum popped into Games Workshop to sound out what she was going to get for my birthday. Eldar Dire Avengers and a fire prism, I think. When the helpful bloke at Games Workshop obviously decided to nickel and dime her for a little bit of extra cash, and convinced her to get a white dwarf, which she promptly brought home. I was beside myself, to be honest. Us having money for such things beyond birthdays was quite rare. So getting a white dwarf was a bigger deal for me than it was for most people, I guess. When I got home that night, I flicked through the pages. I remember I had a bunk bed with a desk underneath it. I just sat at that desk, flicking through with a cold drink, just going through it, marvelling at all the glossy pictures of models I'd never be able to afford, until I came upon a section in the middle of the magazine that looked like old parchment paper. It covered about 20 pages of the centre of the booklet, and I was a little confused, and so I skipped it until I got to the final piece of that section. The picture of Horus about to duel and fight the Emperor. You know the one I mean? It's on screen now. You know what I mean. Fun fact though, I actually think this... I'm going to put it on there you go. I actually think this is a much better picture, even though it does not show as much. It just looked so much more realistic and broken, as if you are there just catching a glimpse of what's going on amidst falling space debris and the entire bridge of the Vengeful Spirit coming apart at the seams under the strain of the combat. The warriors around the Emperor and Horus even look like they are utterly stunned and being knocked out, senseless, overloaded by the sheer combat between Horus and the Emperor. Anyway, the art gave me pause, and so I stopped. I flicked back, and I started reading. Eventually, I threw on some music. I believe an entire Foo Fighters album. Sue me, I was 14. And I sat back down to take in what was being said from the start. So I flicked back to the start of the parchment section and I started reading. The scene was laid out for me. The story of the Horus Heresy up until the Siege of Terra was surmised in 2 or 3 pages. Then the siege itself was told. I read about angelic heroes, incredible last stands, imperial heroes cutting down traitor champions, legionaries from both sides fighting to the death, one side desperate to save a dying empire, the other side desperate to prove that all their sacrifices to this point hadn't been for nothing. I think that's what comes across most in the article. The tragedy of the traitor legions, and that at least in this telling, they thought they were in the right. In fact, they needed to be in the right. Otherwise, what was this all for? This is something almost completely lost in the Horus Heresy series of books, in my opinion, and something that the article just hit home out of the park for me, at least. By the end of the article, I was completely hooked. I had to know more. I read The White Dwarf from cover to cover, and eventually headed to get my first set of Space Marines with my first paycheck a few years later. Horus Rising was out a year or 2 after this, and so I still remember reading those books, the first 3 anyway, Horus Rising, False Gods and Galaxy in Flames, as I started my own jobs in Liverpool. I was constantly buried in them whenever I could be. Whilst that series, the Horus Heresy series itself, lost its way later on, the hold of that original article never did on me, and whilst I still paid for it in the form of a White Dwarf, compared to an entire book that needs to be read and paid for, it was kind of free. I mean, the article was not even on the cover of the magazine or one of its main features that month. It was just kind of thrown in as an afterthought. Cost in terms of our hobby can mean many things. Yes, it can mean money. Books can be, and are, quite frankly, expensive for what they are. There is another cost here, though. Time. Have you ever wondered why we complain so much about how bloated the Horus Heresy book series is? Have you ever wondered why that is? This is because we generally only get 1 or 2 scenes that actually are pertinent to the overall plot of the war per book. Or at least we did for a good 30 odd books that the series is made up of. This means you are sinking copious amounts of time into a book series to find out relatively little beyond what you already know. In short, the series itself has no respect for your money and less respect for your time. And time, as we grow older, we start working jobs, becomes more and more precious to us. As someone who is coming into 40k for the first time, this is extremely daunting. In fact, whilst our hobby and lore is some of the most extensive, brilliantly written despite my rewrites, and realised in fiction, It is also some of the most dense and ridiculous in terms of some real low effort entries and an almost glee in being as obtuse as possible to get a firm grip on. It's almost as if the writers of 40k love the fact that their lore is hard to grasp. And that sucks. That sucks big time. Star Wars has the original movies as an opening hook. The first 3, right? Then they sell you toys, they sell you video games, they sell you books, artwork, albums, audiobooks, everything. Star Trek has the TV series as a primer. Alien has its own set of movies as an opening gambit. Even Warhammer Fantasy, technically, let's be honest, has other fantasy series like Lord of the Rings as a sort of nudge towards its tabletop greatness, even though it is set in an entirely different setting. But there is nothing else really like 40k. For all the people nitpicking that statement in previous videos that I've made about making that statement, I think you either missed the point entirely out of ignorance or out of idiotic purpose. Normal people out there who are not into the 40k or not into 40k at all have not seen anything like 40k before. Just because your nerd ass has seen 129,823 things that are kind of similar to 40k does not mean 14-year-old Northern Exile has. That's my point. We have no primer, no solid footing with which to grapple with and get a top-down view of what the setting actually is, and that is a huge shame because 40k kicks fucking ass. It is the greatest sci-fi property on Earth. Literally. Not a lot of people will get to experience it the same way that I did first time. That sense of wonder and learning about things that seem so much larger than yourself, it really instilled a sense of awe in me towards 40k that I don't think many other people have had, and even if they do, it is really difficult to convey that feeling unless you've had it yourself. And a few of you I know will be making your dinner, will be driving back from work, will be plodding along with whatever work you're doing and nodding to yourself thinking, yeah, I've had that feeling. It kind of feels like falling, but into something really awesome. And so, my dear listener, I want to leave you with my solution. I'm not going to go into what I think 40k as a primer should be. I'll do that next time. But I will tell you how I'd release it, how I'd get it out in the world. Just to prove to you that it can be done. It definitely can be done in a way that, doesn't cost that much money. Online, in my release schedule, there would be free snippets every single month, detailing what is coming out and when, as a massive opening primer to the current 40k timeline. In White Dwarf, there would be a similar looking article in the magazine every month to the one that I read when I was a kid, detailing another army and section of the galaxy. So yes, everybody would get their time in the spotlight. We would, of course, start with the Horus Heresy, giving birth to the modern Imperium. Everything from the Siege to the Scouring. We'd cover the earlier bits of the Horus Heresy, like the Dropsite Massacre and things like that, but only in passing, because, we want you to buy the Horus Heresy books, because they're out there, right? Alright, so, everything from the Siege to the Scouring, though, we cover in our first initial forays into 40k, because we're setting up the current timeline. We're not really focusing on, the Horus Heresy itself. We'd focus on the Inquisition, and how the Imperium formed in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy. The next month would be Imperial History, looking at the different ages within the Imperium, the Age of Apostasy and everything that goes along with that and all those other things. Heading towards the Time of Ending, which is the current timeline of 40k. Then, we would look at 2 Space Marine chapters a month, seeing what they are up to in similar articles, and of course we would cover the Chaos guys as well, they would be in there too. So I would probably do a mirror image every single month. So the first few months would be, you know, there would be World Eaters and Blood Angels. They would go together, right? And so we would see the tragedy of both legions from back in the day, and how their chapters, well, the Blood Angels chapters went on from there, and how the World Eaters Legion went on from there, you know? So in that, we could go back and show you a bit more of the Horus Heresy and what was going on. Of course, in brief, because we only have 20-odd pages. So in brief, you know, we have 20-odd pages, or 10 pages per chapter. There we go. And we go from there all the way through, before working our way into the Xenos factions, and pulling back the curtain on the Tyranids, Necrons, Orcs, and others in the setting, until we get a full picture of 40k in all of its myriad forms. Alright, here is the kicker though. Here's the kicker. These articles are free as a standalone thing. They are available in print from Games Workshop. The only caveat is you need to walk into the store to pick it up. That means every parent or new hobbyist, that's me by the way, every parent or new hobbyist gets all of the articles up until the current most recent one with their first big purchase of the hobby. That means if a mum comes in and says, hey, I want to get my son into 40k, I hear it's really good for him, you say, of course it is. It teaches him really valuable social skills, arithmetic, you know, writing, you know, being expressive with his artistic temperaments, painting, patience, all these other things it teaches them. Yeah, it'll teaches them all these skills that will be invaluable to him later on in life. And also, by the way, here are 10 article booklets. They're only small, they're very cheap, they're made of normal paper, but there you go. Here is the story of Warhammer, and it's free. Here it is for you from start to finish, up until our most recent one. Our most recent one is in the White Dwarf that has just come out. There you go, there's the most recent one. Bang, we are there. This person now has a solid footing in 40k. Straight away. If you want to support our current, you know, drive to get 40k in front of people, you can support it by getting a White Dwarf as a thank you, as it is the most recent article in it from that month inside as well. Go for it. That is how I would start putting down a solid lexicon for 40k. No dense books, no expensive TV series yet, nothing Games Workshop could not easily do off their own back at very little cost to themselves. Just nice, simple memories that will last forever in the minds of the folks just starting out. Let's be honest, lads, if we want to be hobby bros, the starting parts of the hobby shouldn't be for us. They shouldn't. We should go and get these booklets as a thank you, yeah, sure. But really, we need to realise these aren't for us. We know all the nerdy little bits of 40k because we were lucky enough to have certain experiences that pulled us in. But not everybody would be. Far more people could be into our hobby if we just let them in to the good stuff. I don't mean people coming in and changing things with identity politics. I don't mean that we shouldn't be very stringent with our policies on quality of people who are coming into the hobby. I don't mean that. I mean everybody should have the same chance to read how awesome this setting is. Can you imagine how much 14-year-old North would have loved reading over 3 booklets like this? How much time will be put into devouring it all until I decide on my first army? That's what 40k is. It should be open and welcoming with its lore. The books are always there if you want to go further. So is the tabletop game. But the story itself should be celebrated as something sacrosanct and pure and free. You shouldn't need 19 books, 20 books, to get the full picture of this thing that you might spend the rest of your life loving with your time and your wallet. This is something to be proud of. I hope you're sitting there realising how lucky we are to be a part of this hobby, so be proud of it and let people engage with it, even if they don't have the money for the models right now. The more we neglect this, quite frankly, the more 14-year-old Northern exiles we lose to things like Fortnite and other hot garbage. What do you guys think? I know this one wasn't that much of a long video, mainly because I wrote this script from start to finish, and these are much harder to do in long-term format. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my little look into what I think 40k should be going forward. Thank you very much for Eddie in drawing this amazing piece of artwork. He didn't do it just for me. It's something that I found online, and it's amazing. So go and support him on Instagram. Go and support my new music partner down below. And funny enough, I've not spoken to him. He just, he just gives these out for free. These are free. You can put them on your own streams and stuff. So try and go and support him online. The link is down below. If you want to support me, then, the Patreon is also down below, as well as, subscribe to the channel. And if it's not me you want to support in the spirit of this video, then go and find somebody else who is in the 40k sphere and support them, please. Because the more you do that, the more you make sure that more people can actually start making a living out of this, out of giving you more lore and more things to love about 40k. Even if it's not me, go and give it to somebody else. Because this is a part that really needs to grow. Beyond the models, beyond the TV series, beyond Warhammer Plus, beyond all of that. We are the beating heart of this hobby. We are the ones writing the fan fictions. We are the ones writing backgrounds to our own armies. We are the ones investing so much time and effort into building this place for everybody to come and be a part of. As a thing, we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate that. Alright? Alright. I love you all a long time. I will be back tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares. Thursday will be lore video this week, so don't worry, a lore video is coming. It'll be on Thursday this week, and then on Friday we'll be doing some more Hobby Nightmares. Love you all a long time. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you soon. Have a good one. Bye.